This is the unique thing about Bitcoin. It's the first asset in history that has all three functions of money at the same time. But not only is it all three functions of money at the same time, it is clearly the best at each of those functions of money at the same time. So individually. So in up until Bitcoin, you had store of value was dominated by gold historically, and that's a $10 trillion market cap. And for the last 5,000 years, people have denominated their value or store of value in gold. Medium of exchange is a different beast. That's what you want on a daily trade, global trade, whatever that might be. That's a $100 trillion market cap, and that's dominated by the US dollar. Ironically, I don't see that changing anytime soon, and the whole medium of exchange when it comes to Bitcoin, I think is a bit of a moot point, but I can cover that off if you want later. And the final function of money is the unit of account. Now this is our ledger system. You know, we've basically got an immutable ledger, supply and issuance, which has never been able to be created before. And so what this means for me is this is a much better unit of account than we've ever seen before, but we really can't comprehend what that means because it feels like we are monkeys trying to operate a nuclear power plant. We don't even know what the functionality of this is yet, but I know it's going to redefine society, and it's going to, I believe, dramatically change the incentive structure of broader society. And so if you look at those three functions of money, Bitcoin now dominates all three of those, and now Bitcoin dominates and supersedes, you know, the store of value function of gold because it's absolute scarcity of 21 million. It's seizure resistant. You look at medium of exchange, the US dollar is dominant. I don't expect that to be dislodged anytime soon, but that medium of exchange function, Bitcoin improves, I believe, because it's digital. There's an immutable supply and issuance, and the final thing is that it's censorship resistant, which I think is a massive upgrade if you're, you know, if you value property rights. And then the unit of account comes with an immutable ledger supply and issuance, which is completely different to what we see in our existing system. You know, in our existing system, we just print money out of thin air and it goes on the ledger and it's a journal entry. Yeah. If they want to add $4 trillion, you just need to hold your finger on that zero button, for a fraction of a second longer, and it puts another zero on every split second. So all of a sudden, you know, you're left with a massive improvement in that. And the key thing I think about is from an economic perspective, we have never had one asset that converges those three functions of money. And now a lot of people are looking at this, I think incorrectly, that they think, oh, well, the market cap for Bitcoin is store of value plus medium of exchange plus unit of account. And it's like, I understand why you think that, but that's not thinking about it correctly, I believe, because you now have, for the first time in history, store of value having to compete with medium of exchange, having to compete with unit of account. So we're at this very unique situation where all the functions of money now have to compete for space on the blockchain. And then this is where I think it goes exponential very quickly, because the formula for that should be something more like store of value multiplied by medium of exchange multiplied by unit of account. And this is where, you know, a lot of people give me criticism on that to say, oh, you know, there's not enough money in the world for that number. And I'm like, money is a construct. And yes, there is enough money in the world, but it's going to be redefined and housed in different ways. So because, very quick sort of economics lesson, price is determined at the margin and market cap is downstream of price. So the market cap, everyone looks at the market cap and goes, oh, there's not that much money in the world. And it's like, yes, I've done the numbers. I'm not stupid. I understand that. But the market cap is going to be whatever the market cap's going to be, because the price is determined at the margin. So the market cap will be what it is, but the price is the price.
Could you give an example of that for people that may not be following what you're saying there with price or market cap being the downstream of price?
Sure. So if we look at, I'm trying to think of an example that would be
which to clarify, like I have the similar thing. You know, I talk about Bitcoin. You know, you talk about billions. I throw out lots of absurd quote unquote numbers too, and people say the same thing. Like, oh, Luke, you're so dumb. You can't do basic math. There's not enough money in the world. And it's like, I try to explain from that first principles. You know, like for example, right now we're recording this conversation on a bunch of iPhones. Yeah. You know, a bunch of smartphones, and it's like, if we were to look back a few decades ago, you know, what's your calculator worth? And what's your camera worth? And what's this worth? And that's what worth. And it's like, if you take all these innovations and you put them in one device, what's the price of that? I mean, like these smartphones are worth multitudes more than all those former inferior technologies were worth added or multiplied together, and the cost is getting cheaper and cheaper. And I think we don't see that because, as Jeff Booth says, everything falls to the marginal cost of production, towards zero, and so these things just become part of life, and we don't have a price to that because prices keep falling down in nominal terms, but the prosperity is increasing hyper exponentially. And so then obviously with Bitcoin, it's different in that it actually does reflect that nominal absorption of that value. So anyway, I fully understand what you're saying. You get the same thing all the time where people don't understand that what you're saying of market cap being downstream of price. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if you have an example of that just to help people get a better idea of what that means. But
I think probably a visceral example of this would be using Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Two very wealthy men who have made themselves from nothing into the richest men on earth. And you look at how their wealth is made, it's derived by creating value in a company. And you look at this and think, okay, they've stored their life's monetary energy in the stock that they own. And up until recently, they hadn't sold shares until about 2018. So they had 20 years of their life force solely invested in that, and they own large swathes of that company. Now, if they were to sell their entire stock on the market, it would crash the price by 80 or 90% because they can't do that. Now, why do they? Firstly, they don't have to, and secondly, it would crash the price precipitously because there would be all that stock on the market for purchase, and if there's a market, the price needs to fall to meet where the market is.
Yeah.
But because they don't have to sell, it holds up the price.
Yeah.
But if they were to put all their stock on the market tomorrow, then the price falls precipitously. And this is where, if you understand that Bitcoin's the greatest form of money ever invented, and money represents the greatest form of optionality that you can have for your life's work/energy, because any good can be exchanged for it, then you look at, say, the example of Elon Musk and Bezos that have 99% of their net wealth in their stock, maybe a little bit less, but give or take 99%. And I look at that and I think, well, that's Amazon stock, that's Tesla, that only trades for 36 hours a week. That's not a pretty good deal for optionality in my time and being able to purchase things. It means I've got to turn up between 10 and 4 p.m. every week to sell that stock to get money out to then buy what I want. Whereas Bitcoin is open 24/7, 365.
Plus all the regulatory constraints that, there could be claims of insider trading and taxes and everything else. There's a lot of constraints there. So
correct. And I look at this and I think, personally, I look at this and I think, we have an opportunity in front of us that Jeff Bezos had in 1999 or 1995, whenever he started that business, that except rather than owning Amazon back in 95 that went up 1,000x, we get to own Bitcoin, which is a far bigger concept, far bigger market than that, and there is less people on this system. I think it's less than 1%. I think it's 0.1% of the population really understands what the enormity of what we're sitting in front of is. And so I look at this and think, if you can hold the quality of stock like Amazon back in 1995 and know where it's going, that's the equivalent of Bitcoin today. There's more upside in front of us than behind us. And when you understand what that optionality is, people are going to hoard that and store all of their wealth in it. And this is where, you and I in 5 or 10 years' time may have 99.9% of our wealth in Bitcoin, because that gives us the greatest optionality. And people like options, I like options, and this is where, from an investment perspective, you want to have the greatest optionality that you can have because it gives you the most opportunities. So,
well, that's the whole point of money. You don't want money for the sake of money. You want money for the sake of what it can buy. It's a value statement. I want the money so I can acquire the things I want.
Yes.
And that's optionality. That's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's, Bitcoin is better at doing that than property, than bonds, than political currencies, and then stocks even. So, yeah, it's a better money in that sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think another example of market cap being downstream of price was oil in the lockdowns.
Yes.
Of 2020, because a lot of people may not know this, but oil went negative briefly, correct? It went negative when the pandemic was beginning, the world was shut down, oil trade negative, and that's because there were all these ships, in ports and oceans just like this one, they were just sitting there with all this oil and they were losing money, so there was this negative price in oil temporarily, and I think a lot of people had trouble understanding that then, and likewise today, I have trouble understanding what we're saying about Bitcoin being this hyper exponential thing, because it's like all the oil in the world, the price is set at these margins in these harbors, right? And so in the same way that this slight oversupply or the slight lower demand at the margins for oil crash price negative, I mean, then the question to you is, Peter, what happens if the opposite begins? Where we were at dinner last night, we were joking like, what if the Saudis are just spending, these years setting up these accounts and then suddenly they just buy them all? Like, what happens, Peter, if someone or a group of people or some company or country just buys them all in the course of a few months or a year or a few weeks or whatever it is? Like, what happens then? Do people freak out? Is it a parabolic overnight action? Like, what will that look like for people in real practical terms as this occurs?
I think there will be shock, because what I think will happen is, I go to bed some nights thinking, is tonight the night I wake up and Bitcoin's got a floor set at $1 million, because either the bond market or a country with a money printer has figured out this is what it should be. So my thinking on this is that when you have a money printer, you can pay whatever you want for that, because it doesn't cost you anything. And so for any country with a money printer, I'm like, that's the game. That's the end game, getting an asset that you can't easily reproduce. In fact, you can't reproduce more of. You're only allowed so many a time. I look at this and think it's, in my head, sort of a cartoonish example of this would be like an elephant stepping on a tube of toothpaste. It's just going to rocket up vertically. And this is where the conversation we had around trading. I don't understand the trading around Bitcoin, because for me, I look at this and I think that could happen any day, and it will happen one day without notice. We'll get a new floor will be set at a totally unbelievable margin.
10x, 100x.
Whatever that may be. And I'll pick up the phone, I'll call you, I'll say, are you seeing what I'm seeing on the screen? I just need to make sure someone's not pranking me. It'll be the same on your screen and globally. We'll all high-five and think, wow, that's amazing, but the very real might just hold off as this. That's fantastic.
We've got a tractor funded by the Fed and JPAL right now, trying to drown out our conversation. So anyway, we're talking about Bitcoin, new floor set.
There's a new floor set, and
bucks,
all of a sudden, you've now got governments entering the picture who have zero cost to produce money to purchase Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me. You get to acquire the hardest asset known to man, and it costs you nothing. It's the greatest trade ever. I wish the Australian government would do that. Yeah. I actually hope the US government would do that.
Thank you so much for watching my content and being a supporter of mine. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun for me to do, and it's really meaningful to know that so many people are enjoying my content and learning about Bitcoin. I think it's so important for people to get off zero. In addition to getting off zero, it is really critical. It is really important that you also begin taking self-custody of your sats and of your Bitcoin. This is because if you have Bitcoin on an exchange or you don't have proper self-custody, this is going to be a massive problem for you in the future, most likely. If Bitcoin starts having rapid periods of appreciation and there are rapid spikes in demand for Bitcoin education, and for Bitcoin advocates and advisors, it's going to be increasingly important that you have self-custody of those coins. So my message to you is, please consider getting that self-custody. Now, you can do that on your own. There are plenty of free tutorials online. There's plenty of great work like that. But if you want somebody to help you with self-custody, if you want somebody to help you take cold storage of your Bitcoin, of your Satoshis, if you want somebody to help you set up a multi-sig vault, to set up an estate plan, to set up a plan for you as a person, an individual, as a business owner, as a charity, whatever the case, I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, and I'm happy to say that I really enjoy it. I love working with my clients. My job is literally to help people buy Bitcoin and secure it properly for years, decades, and generations to come. So if you want to learn about my services at the Bitcoin Advisor and what we do, you should click the link in the description. Here you can read a bit about what I do. You can book a free consultation with me. You can book a free meeting with me. I'll send you lots of free complimentary paperwork explaining how multi-sig vaults work, cold storage, giving you all the education you need. Everything's fully open source, what we do. Our main goal is education, helping get coins off exchanges, and people be able to not lose sleep at night when they buy and secure their Bitcoin. So you can feel free to book a meeting with me. The first one is free and complimentary, just to figure out what your priorities are and get that adjusted. But if that's something that could be used to you, I really highly encourage you to take self-custody, whether that's with me or not. Please just do it. But for the many of you that probably will eventually want a multi-sig collaborative custody vault, the Bitcoin Advisor could be the place to go. And so click the link in the description, check that out. Really appreciate your time. And